Hey everybody, Kaoiji here. So recently I've been playing Phantasy Star Universe. A lot of the reason is because everything that Phantasy Star New Genesis has been introducing has been reminding me of Universe more and more. Now, Phantasy Star Universe had a lot of unique features that no other Phantasy Star has ever had. Weapons like the whip and the class system are just some things that no other Phantasy Star has been able to replicate and or do. While sure, you can say that it's a little bit of a dated mechanic because you can't actually dodge in Phantasy Star Universe, let's just be honest, the fact that you couldn't dodge adds to another layer of gameplay that makes some of the things in Universe still work even to this day. One of my favorite things in Universe is the little lobby sections in between missions. The only problem with these is actually the fact that you had to then complete a previous mission in order to get to them, which then led into other missions. So when looking to farm for specific things, unfortunately, you then had to do a series of missions in order to get back to the original, which created some little bit of a problem. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that the areas that were in between each mission were some of my favorites. Now, call me insane, but one of the biggest things that I enjoyed in Phantasy Star Universe, besides just being able to go to the missions, was the fact that you had to almost full clear every single mission. It made it so that way whenever you were doing these missions, you actually got to see the entirety of the map, which unfortunately when it came into Phantasy Star Online, where it respects your time a little bit more just going through explorations. The problem was that there really wasn't any benefit to completing the entire field unless you were doing something like an advanced quest. I guess one other thing that I really enjoyed about Phantasy Star Universe was the fact that there were multiple planets. They kind of broke the monotony. Rather than sitting around in the arc ships, you could basically visit another planet. There'd be an entirely new mission set, and then each of the tiles that were within that set of missions were also different as well. This created an entirely new dynamic that was something that was really cool to see because unfortunately, much like in Phantasy Star Online Original and like the PSP games, unfortunately, you kind of just sit around in the same spots where it makes it easier for you to find your friends. It kind of doesn't break the scenery monotony in between missions, which is honestly something I really hope that they bring back in New Genesis, where besides just our main city, there are small little outposts that we can visit to be able to be either pick up missions or find specific NPCs that might have something new that the main city doesn't offer. Another thing to note is that in Phantasy Star Online 2, it almost feels like a lot of the items that we use are not actually that beneficial. What I mean is that unless you're using a mate lover's ring or an atomizer lover's ring, the problem becomes is that the items take a little bit too long for you to be able to use. Now in Phantasy Star Universe, and I recall a lot of the other Phantasy Stars as well, the items were instant use. So I'm really hoping that whatever items that we have going into New Genesis bring back this instant use feature. Because to be completely honest with you, it kind of takes away from a lot of the new player experience when you have to weigh using a charged Resta or even using an item to be able to heal yourself. Only to then realize that there are rings and other items that then make this feature a little bit easier to use. But again, why make it more difficult to use and then have an item fix that later? That was one of the things that never made sense to me in Phantasy Star Online. And then going back into something that I spoke about earlier, which is what you couldn't dodge, it also made things like traps a little bit more detrimental, basically forcing you to not only play with another player or to be able to have preemptively used an item beforehand or use a class that can specifically see traps. Traps would basically make it so that way you couldn't move, or even some of them triggered turrets that would do a heavy amount of damage. This put an even bigger emphasis on party play because much like in Phantasy Star Online right now, a majority of the game can actually be soloed, especially when you get into the higher levels. Now, Phantasy Star Universe wasn't any different, especially once you unlocked Fire Master and you just tornado danced everything. But there was no better feeling than working with other players, seeing that there were traps on the floor, having each class fulfill a role that no other class can do. And then I guess one other thing that I really enjoyed was the fact that techniques also had different and unique animations. Photon arts and techniques, as you level them up, basically they would go into one animation into another. Like a Megid would get larger and then have a lot more dark balls. And then there was also the earth element that would shoot rocks, and the rocks would get even bigger and then be filled with magma. Again, these things were really cool. Then using photon arts, not only to go from one stage, but as you level them up from 11 to 21, each additional stage after then had another combo to the skill. Now, Phantasy Star Universe may have been a little bit more time consuming, but let's be honest, it did bring a lot of things that were really cool to the table. Not to say that Phantasy Star Online 2 was anywhere near a flop, because honestly, it improved on some of the game's core flaws, creating much faster gameplay and much more user-friendly elements. But as we start getting into New Genesis, I'm not gonna lie to you, there are just some things that just really blow my mind, that the more I see the footage, like an enemy footage and whatnot, I can't help but remember everything that I experienced in Phantasy Star Universe and be like, oh man, that's where they took that from. That's so cool. And I would hope that you guys agree with me on at least that. But anyway, I'm going to end the video out here. There are a lot of other things that I definitely want to go over when it comes to Phantasy Star Online Universe and even some of the other PSP games, and then comparing them into where I think the elements of New Genesis are taking them from. So far, I think that New Genesis is definitely tying into the relationship with Phantasy Star Universe a little bit more. But again, there's a lot more details that I'm going to be hyper focusing on a little bit later. But anyway, thank you guys again for watching. Stay awesome and stay beautiful. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. I'm out.